As an introvert, you will be able to serve people better over your lifetime if you give yourself permission to have the amount of solitude you need. That is you loving well. Choosing solitude is you loving well. It's not withdrawal, it's not selfishness, it's not any of the things that we might sometimes worry about. It is you loving well as an introvert so you can fully bring your gifts to the calling that God has for your life.
Well, hey everyone, welcome to the Ministry Wives podcast. I'm Amy Peterson, and today we are talking about the introverted ministry life. Yes, we do exist, and we can proudly own it because God has created us this way. And this is not to leave extroverts out. Each one of us have our struggles and strengths, and we love you and we need you, extroverts, in our lives. But I think this is an important conversation to give space for all of us introverts who are serving in ministry and who may be struggling in their role as a ministry wife and really be able to step in knowing and celebrating the beautiful truth that we are and who God has created us to be. So joining me today is my guest, Holley Gerth. Welcome, Holley.
Thank you for having me.
I am so excited about this conversation and so honored that you are here to share what you know and what you've experienced with it about introverts with all of us. So thank you. I can't wait. All right. So, Holley, you are a podcast host, life coach, co-founder of the Encourage online community for women, best-selling author. You have a ministry to introverts. When you hear that intro, did you ever imagine that that would be something that would follow your name?
No, that doesn't sound like my everyday life. I type by myself in coffee shops a lot. Like that's basically what that comes down to.
That's the reality, right? That's behind the curtain.
Yeah.
But it is really cool what God does, even when we don't know it, as we just follow him and say yes to the next steps.
Yes, very true.
And I'm just so thankful that sometimes he leads us blindly, although I fight to want to know where he's taking me. But I think I'd be freaked out if I knew where he was taking me,
Yes, absolutely. One step at a time.
one step at a time. Well, would you just kind of fill in the spaces and let us know about who you are, what your family looks like, and where
Okay.
you call home?
All right. Yes. Well, I am the granddaughter of Christian bookstore owners. So I grew up dreaming about being a writer. I'm actually named after my grandpa Holley, who owned the store. I wrote my first little book when I was 5. So my mom still has it.
That is so precious that that was in you way back when and you knew it.
In our family, we have a crazy family story. So we tried to have kiddos for about 10 years, and that wasn't God's plan for us. And
Mm.
one night I saw a documentary about kids who age out of the foster system. And basically at 18, they're told, have a nice life. And something in me was like, that's not okay. Like, who's going to rock their babies or walk them down the aisle? So
Mm.
when people would say, have you thought about adoption? I started saying, if we adopt, we're adopting a 20-year-old. And we did. God brought our daughter Lavelle into our life when
Oh
she
my
was 20.
goodness.
We adopted her when she was 21. She is now much older than that. She got married and had 2 littles. So we get to be young Nana and Poppy.
That
So,
is the best. Nana
yeah.
is your grandma name?
Yes, Nana.
I can't believe looking at you calling you a grandma,
Well, we
but
skipped a few steps, but yeah.
that is so amazing. And just to kind of rewind a little bit, because those years of infertility, 10 years, we can say it in a passing statement,
Mm,
but for those of us who have walked through certain seasons of infertility, that carries some
yeah.
weighty heart hurt and wrestling with the
It
Lord,
does.
really.
Yeah, definitely. Definitely. You're right. I can talk about it now. It's a scar, not a wound, but those
Mhm.
were very hard years. And I
Mhm.
often thought, has God forgotten about me? Am I doing something wrong? And then the day that we finalized Lavelle changing her last name was August 28th. So we celebrated it every year and called it Girth Day. And our
So
first
beautiful.
granddaughter was born on Girth Day.
Oh my
So
goodness.
So I
That
feel
is the coolest God thing.
So I feel like he was like, "You know what? You thought my
Mm.
timing was off for so long, and I had it down to the day." You know? So if
Mm,
anyone's on that journey now, just know you are not forgotten, you're not
mm.
overlooked, you're not doing something wrong. God's timing and ways just sometimes look very different than what we imagine.
And he is always working, and he is always working beautiful things, even though it doesn't feel
Mhm.
like it.
Yes. That doesn't cancel out the grief, but it does give us some hope.
That's right, because the grief is real and the grief is
Mhm.
there, but there's grief in the hope
Yeah.
of what God is doing. Oh, I love that story. And I think that really resonates with many of us who have walked through years of longing
Mhm.
and just wondering, where in the world are you, Lord? And then coming to a place of being able to look back and say, okay, I don't get it all, but I kind of get it, and I
Yeah.
trust you with it. And then some are never see that, and they just have
Yeah.
to live in trust of Him.
Yeah. Sometimes we see it on the other side.
Yes, that's
Sometimes in this
right.
life, sometimes when we're home.
That's so good and such a reminder just to keep stepping along, trusting Him because we
Mm.
just never know what He's up to. Well, you have written a book called The Powerful Purpose of Introverts. And it is something that I was just drawn to because I'm an introvert, and we're going to talk about those things in a little bit. Just because your webpage is really so many wonderful resources that just really help an introvert, one, identify who they are, and two, ways to support their strengths. And so, how did you get there? How did you go into a ministry supporting introverts?
Yeah, well, I learned I was an introvert in college. It's one of those moments you remember like a photograph. Like I remember exactly where I was.
Hmm.
It's at a campus ministry. I was sitting on this old gray carpet and someone was like, introverts. And I learned there are other people who operated the same way I did in the world and that it could be a
Wow.
strength. And I didn't know much about it past that, but I started writing books and speaking and just thought, okay, I have to be an extrovert now. Like to be effective in ministry, I have to change who God made me. And I did that for several years and I reached a point of burnout. And I had been traveling and speaking intensely for a year, and in the last conference I went to, I was the keynote Saturday. And on Sunday morning in worship, I just had tears in my eyes. And I felt like God was saying, it's time to go home. It's time to
Hmm.
go home. And I knew He meant get on a plane, go home, take a nap because you really need one. But even deeper, go home to who I created you to be. Like
Hmm.
so much of what you have taken on or forced yourself to be, I've never asked of you. And I hadn't paused really to, I was just like, this is the deal. This is how it works. I think so
Mhm.
many of us go into ministry roles and just say, this is the job.
Right.
This is the job. And it doesn't matter if I don't like parts of it or if I'm getting burned out or if I'm exhausted all the time. That is the price we pay to do what we're called to do. And
Mm.
God just really showed me that He had intentionally designed me as an introvert and
Mm.
that I had everything I needed to do all He had called me to do. And so I began the process not only of deeply researching what it actually meant to be an introvert, which turned into this
Mhm.
book, but really realigning my life where I could
Mm.
still reach people. I could still do ministry, but I could do that in a way that was sustainable for me. And I could let go of some things that He created extroverts to do.
That's so
And that's a
good.
beautiful thing to be like, you know what? There are people called to this. It is okay for me to do what I'm called to. And so that really was a multi-year journey in my life of healing.
Mm.
And out of that came this book because I
Mm.
thought I want other introverts to know this too. I want them to
Mm.
experience healing and freedom and even being able to celebrate our introverted strengths that I think our world needs more than ever
Mm.
before.
That's so true. And it's really such a layered book full of not only science stuff, not only of scriptural stuff, but really practical things. But one of the things that I noticed in the back is a thank you note to extroverts. And
Yes.
so I'm so curious of why you added that to this book on introversion.
Yeah, I love that you called that out. So, one of my biggest fears in writing a book for introverts is that I didn't want the extroverts that I love so dearly to feel like I was saying introverts are better Like my daughter that we just talked about is an extreme extrovert. And I love that she brings so much joy and enthusiasm and energy to our lives. And I would never want to put something into the world that made her feel like I had as an introvert, that there's something wrong with me that needs to change. And so introverts aren't better, extroverts are better. We're just different. And I really believe that's intentional. I think that in creation, we see a lot of complements day and night, land and sea, masculine, feminine. I really believe introvert and extrovert. Like we are a complementary pairing, that the world is better when we are all fully who we're made to be. So those were for my lovely little extroverts that I just wanted them to know, like, I don't want you to change. Keep being you. And
And
the
we need
introverts,
you.
yes, we need you. We need you
We
to be
need
you.
you.
So,
And for those of you who are listening who were curious about what introvert is, but you're an extrovert, we need to have this conversation together because
mhm.
the more that we understand each other, the better we can work together and have each other's backs in this life. So let's just clear the slate. So, everybody who's listening, just kind of clear your mind of all your conceptions and probably some misconceptions about what you think an introvert is. Because, Holly, I want you to give us like the basic, simple what is an introvert?
So, an introvert is someone whose brain and nervous system are wired in a way where they thrive in less stimulating environments. So, when there's less coming at an introvert from the outside. So, a great example of this is an introvert often loves having one on one coffee with someone where there's deep conversation.
Mm.
The extroverts I know often love being at a table full of people where there's a lot of noise and energy, and they can kind of go from conversation to conversation. That's just a lot more stimulating. There's more coming in at us from the outside. And so that is the difference. It's not about how much we like to socialize. I gave an example with people, but it doesn't even need to involve people. For example,
Mm.
they put introverts and extroverts in rooms and said, we're going to turn on music, turn the volume to what is most comfortable for you. And introverts turned it 30% lower. So that's an
That
example,
is
even
fascinating.
sensory. And so if you're an introvert who walks into a setting like church where there's a lot of music and lights and noise and people who want to say hi, and you feel overwhelmed, that is normal. It is just your brain and nervous system. It's a biological wiring. That's what it's about. And that's why I say, like, God did this on purpose,
He
and
did. This is how he
that is a
created
beautiful
us.
thing. Mhm.
You do go into some really amazing depth and understanding and explanation in your book about all the science behind it. And I had never truly known that until I read this book. And I've done a lot of work on myself in counseling situations and just in conversations with friends and books and podcasts and things about being an introvert in ministry. But I'd never understood it that it is a wiring of how
Mhm.
God created us to be. And so much of me as an introvert, I've resisted it and tried to change it, like you had mentioned too. And there's such freedom in the acceptance of it. And I just want that for those who are listening who have feel like a fight against it, that you'll be able to see it as how God has made you and learn some different strategies as you
Mhm.
enter into the same setting of busy, crazy church life and family, but are able to walk in it with some peace and understanding of yourself. So you have a link in your webpage that you can take a quick quiz. That's what percent introvert are you? And this one was just like 1 minute tops, and it would give you the percentage of the introvert that you are. So if you all are interested in and thinking, oh my goodness, I don't know what I am. Why did you do like a percentage point? I mean, how is that kind of grading helpful in understanding what an introvert is?
Yeah, because none of us are 100% introvert or extrovert. We just fall along a continuum. And
Mm.
so I felt like that was more helpful, like a percentage instead of you are one or the other, because we're really all both. And especially, I find introverts can be extroverts in a specific role when it's a cause they're passionate about. For example,
Mm.
Oprah Winfrey is an introvert, and you might not guess that. There's a lot of celebrities and people who are very public that are actually introverts, but then they need to recharge after. And so I think it's healthy to say, I have an introvert in me and I have an extrovert in me. One is more dominant than the other, much like we're right handed and left handed. We would never say, I'm only going to use my right hand or only use my left hand, but we do acknowledge one is dominant. So when possible, I'm going to lean into that. And so the quiz is really about that. Like you're not either or, you're both and. It's just about which one is dominant for you.
That's really good. And one of the ways, and you tell me if this is right on or off a bit, but one of the ways in which I describe an introvert to somebody is it's really how you gain your energy. And if you gain your energy through being alone, then that's introvert. And if you gain it through being with people, then you're an extrovert. And that's so simple. And I'm sure there's lots of complexities to that. But is that correct?
Yeah, yeah, it's how we need time as introverts to let our nervous systems process what we have taken in. So one way I like to say it is if you think about your nervous system as a net, extroverts have nets with big holes. They can take in a lot before they get full. Introverts have nets with smaller holes. So their nets get fuller faster, but they catch more. So, an introvert is probably going to be the first one in the room to notice when someone subtly looks like they're probably not okay. And they might go check on them, or they, tend sensory wise, like we said with sound, more sensitive to sound and subtleties. And so, what we need as introverts is time to process what we have taken in, to empty our net, basically, and then we're ready for more. So it's not that we don't enjoy like engaging. It's just that we need that time to internally process and sift through and make sense of. And often introverts are creative. And in that time, that's when they'll have an aha moment or an insight, or a writing will come out of it, something that you contribute to a relationship. Our gifts often emerge. And that's one thing I want, especially introverts in ministry, to know is that time is not selfish. It is
Mm,
preparation for service. As an introvert, you will be able to serve people better over your lifetime if you give yourself permission to
mm,
have the amount of solitude you need. That is you loving well. Choosing solitude is you loving well. It's not withdrawal. It's not selfishness. It's not, any of the things that we might sometimes worry about. It is you loving well as an introvert so you can fully bring your gifts to the calling that God has for your life.
That is so relieving and releasing to so much of what I have done and maybe some of the listeners to just overcompensate for my exhaustion.
Mhm.
And I think over the last 10 years, as I've gotten older and I've begun to let go of things and kind of realize that I don't need this, and this in order to have significance. I'm kind of getting settled with who I am. But I've learned the power of no.
Yeah.
And because I need that time. And I just remember there was a friend in one of the states that we lived who was such an extrovert, just loved going, and doing, and did the most fun things with her kids. And I would compare myself going, yeah, I can't do all that. But then I would use it to shame me of saying, well, then I'm just not a fun mom and I'm not a good mom because I'm not like her. And I had to, instead of going crazy and just live in a pit, I had to turn my thinking and go, "Wait a minute, this we're just different." And I had to tell her through conversations because she would call me like in 15 minutes and say, "Hey, 15 minutes, let's go bowling with the kids," or let's, and that is over sensory. Bowling.
Mhm.
Whew. And so, and I would just have to say, wait. I would tell her, I cannot do things spontaneously. Give me 30 minutes. Let me think about it, and then I'll call you back and let you know. And
Yes.
that was such a great way for me to give myself time to process, but I have little holes in my net.
Introverts use a different brain pathway for processing, a different primary one, and it is longer. So we literally need longer. Like it's a physical, biological reality for us that we are designed for deep thinking. And because the pathway we pull from past, present, and future, all these different areas, then we synchronize that, and then we process it and come out, with whatever it is, where our extrovert friends have a shorter pathway and they're good at that quick, like when you watch them do small talk, you're like, how are you doing that? It's like watching a ping pong match, with very coordinated
Yes.
people playing. You're like, I'm a little jealous of that sometimes, but they are made for that quick,
Mm,
spontaneous, and we are made for, depth and more, maybe some more intentionality. But think about that even in a ministry meeting. Like, you need the
mm.
person who's like, oh, it'd be so fun if we did this with all the women. And then you need someone to say, that sounds great. Now we really need to think about. And then you need someone to say, okay, we've thought about that enough. Let's make a decision. And
That's
then
so
you need
true.
someone to say, okay, let's move forward, but I'm going to make sure that. So, see how those
That's
are
so
such like
good.
a great pairing when we're
Mm,
both bringing that to the table. And so that
mm,
again is another for whoever's listening, whichever way you're wired,
mm,
that is in you for a reason.
mm.
And it's nothing to feel shame or guilt about. It's a gift that you can bring to the table.
Oh, that's a great way to look at it. It's a gift I can bring to the table. Well, back to the quiz. When I took it, and I'm curious what your number was, but my number was 83% introvert. What was your
Yeah.
number?
96.
Oh, holy
Yeah.
96.
96. Yeah.
That is, you got it. You got it. You are in full vetting to write a book like this because you get it. 96%. I'm telling you, it's so fascinating, y'all, to take that and kind of see it. Even the questions that are asked that you ask in order to determine what that number is are just great characteristics that can lend itself to understanding more of what an introvert
Mhm.
is. And so I
Yeah.
just thought that was so helpful. Okay, so let's talk about ministry. And I know that the Lord is giving you a ministry and you interface with a lot of different women. And as I was thinking about strengths and struggles of introverted ministry wives, I started thinking about the struggles that I have walked through. And one of them is just being so tired at an event.
Yeah.
And so I'm just thinking about the seasons that are really, really busy in ministry. And for a ministry wife to know that she wants to be there, she will be there, but it's really overwhelming before she even gets into the event to see the events coming up
Mhm.
on the calendar. And I just feel so tired. How would you encourage women ministry wives to manage that tiredness but yet going to these events, and how would you suggest her to handle that?
Yeah. One tool I really like is having introverts do an energy audit. And so that's where for a day or a week, you write down everything you do and you put a plus by what energizes you, a minus by what drains you, and a question mark if you're not sure. And so that can give you an idea of where's my energy going. It's like doing a budget. You need to know like what's coming in, what's going out. Am I going to be in the red?
That's so
And
good.
that's helpful for everyday life because you do as an introvert, the goal is not to have no minuses because those are part of life.
Mm,
But if you do to if you can eliminate them, if you
mm,
can't, say, can I delegate this? If you can't delegate it, can I strategize around it? And
mm,
so, for example, in a very busy season, if you're thinking, okay, I'm going to have a lot of minuses, then how can you counterbalance that?
mm,
So, like when I travel, I try my best to block out the day before I leave and the day after I get back. So, I'm basically saying
mm,
I need to deposit into my energy tank because I'm going to have a bigger than usual withdrawal. This is a big expense. It's an expense that's worth it, but it is a huge withdrawal from my energy account. So, how am I going to replace those energy funds? And so, if you can ask that even in Christmas to say, like, all right, I probably need some silent nights to, or Easter, whatever, 4th of July, whatever busy season or holidays are on your calendar in a particular time. Just are there ways that I can honor who I am as an
mm.
introvert? And then just try not to guilt or shame ourselves. I think,
Ooh,
especially, if it's a celebratory season, like, the holidays, we do that every year. where it's supposed to be the most wonderful time of the year, joy to the world. Um, and or maybe it's a big ministry conference that everyone's really excited about. As introverts,
Mhm.
we can say something is wrong with me because
Yes, I've
I'm
said
not as
that.
excited and energized about this as it seems everyone else is. Well, first of all, half the people in the room are introverts. That's the split in our population.
Are you serious? There's half?
Again, I think it's an intentional pairing. So half the people in that room are exhausted right along with you.
That is so crazy, half. That is
Half.
amazing. Okay, so that's
Yeah.
helpful. You're not the only one in a
No, you
room.
are not. And that again, this is just how you're wired, and it's okay to honor
Mm,
that.
mm.
It was so funny. I was in a study years ago, and I was the only introvert, and we were going through spiritual disciplines, and we got to solitude, and I was like, "Ooh, yay! Like I'm good at this one." So I was like, yay, excited. And everyone else, all the extroverts were like, oh, we don't like this. We don't want to do it. Like, and the leader was like, maybe 2 minutes this week. You could just have some solitude. And I thought, that's so interesting. Like, they feel
Mhm,
about this the way I do about other things, but we all need both, right? Like, they could probably embrace some solitude in their lives. And sometimes I'm going to need to show up at something that feels a little overwhelming. But it was just reassuring to me to be like, in our modern American culture, we are extrovert dominant, but that has not been the case throughout church history, and it is not the case globally. There are many cultures in the world that are introvert dominant. And so we would be having the reverse conversation where extroverts would feel like they needed to change and introverts, would be more mainstream. And so just realizing that like for much of church history, solitude was the pinnacle of spirituality. Like if you were willing to go off into the desert and live in solitude the rest of your life, you're at the pinnacle of spiritual maturity, which is so strange to think in our modern context. And whatever we think about that, if that's a good idea or not, really, there's balance. But just knowing like we are in a particular cultural context where we feel certain pressures in ministry, and we can pause and say, is this from God or is this an expectation that I've taken on that's human? And if that's the case, it's okay for me to say, I'm willing to show up here, but I'm not going to put pressure on myself to be excited about it.
It's true.
It's okay if I'm just
That's
here, and then I'm
good.
gonna go recharge and refill my introvert account, and
Mm,
maybe I'm gonna have a lot of energy for one-on-one conversation with a friend who's going through a really difficult time.
mm.
And that is where I'm gonna light up, and God's gonna say, "This is your specific assignment."
I really like to kind of process and think through what you just said about strategically and intentionally, one, taking an audit of our energy levels up and down throughout the days, but then also building in like what you do when you go speak a day before. I think my counselor and I have been talking about this, and she calls it post rest, no, pre rest and post rest. And I've learned to do post rest whenever I go speak or do a conference or a weekend. I mean, my eyes are burning, my ears are ringing, my body is aching. It's like this physical just
Mhm.
sludge that I do have to refuel. But she was even encouraging me that like what you do the day before, just pre-rest. And so I
Mhm.
know there's a lot of women out there who just really don't have much margin in their life
Yeah.
between their family, between ministry, between working, and even the rural churches that just it's the pastor that's the only paid staff, and if that, and then the wife just comes along and fills in all the other places. For that woman who is just so worn out and exhausted, what encouragement would you give her when she's looking at the upcoming weeks and going, I just can't do this?
Yeah. I would say start with what is possible as far as getting your introvert needs met. Like Joanna Gaines is an introvert. She has a
Oh my
packed
gosh.
full life. And she said that she will sit in her car for 5 minutes before she goes into an event because that is all she can manage. Like that's her reality.
That
And
is good.
so it's okay to start with 5 minutes and to
Mm,
say, even this little bit of time, I'm going to give myself permission. Because I
Mm.
find most often we can say it's my schedule, it's so tight, it's so packed, but often it's not giving ourselves permission because we
Yes.
feel guilt and shame.
Yes.
So I feel like if we can start with that 5 minutes and say, this is all I got, or I'm going to lock myself in the bathroom for 5 minutes. That is a good introvert party trick. Lock
I think
yourself
we've
in the
all done it.
bathroom.
Yeah.
Yes. So if it's that, you can't even do 5 minutes a car, do 2 minutes in the bathroom until someone knocks on the door and tells you to get out. So I think it starts with permission. And then a strength of
Mhm.
introverts is intentionality. And so really just
Mm.
saying, yes, my life is crazy. My calendar is crazy, but I am at least going to look at it and say,
Mm.
what little tiny thing can I do?
Mm.
And what does fill me up?
Mm.
And what support and resources do I need? Like you mentioned counseling. I'm going to see my counselor tomorrow. I think counseling is great for everybody, but perhaps
Yes.
especially for introverts because we love
Yes.
one-on-one. And so making sure somehow you're getting poured into.
Mm.
So I think that starting small with that, because it can become another to-do list. Now I've got to
Yes.
nurture myself as an introvert. Oh no, there's one more thing in my life I haven't been doing well. I've got to fix this.
It's so
And that's
true.
not what we want, right? So I'd say
Right.
start with 2 minutes if that's all you got, and
That's good.
really just internally starting to give yourself permission
Mm.
to honor who God has made you as an
Mm.
introvert and see if that creeps up over time. You know, that
Mhm.
that 2 minutes might grow to 5 and that 5 might grow to 10 or 15.
That's
And
good.
just for me, it was a process. It wasn't a one and done. I don't
That's
think there's a
good.
magic formula. I wish there was, but I
I
think it
know.
starts with permission and then
Mhm.
experimenting,
That's
saying
good.
this works, this doesn't. I love going to coffee shops. I like walking outside, like just what refills your tank? And
Mm.
is there just a little bit more room in my life for those things?
I'm telling you that for a ministry wife who feels worn out, to just be able to pause and not feel selfish or guilty about it and intentionally look and talk to the Lord about how to live a more filled and joyful life by acknowledging and accepting and giving yourself permission for the way that He has created you. There's such relief and joy. Really, joy of ministry comes back. If it's a little puny right now, it comes back when you can fully step into it, accepting who you really are and who God
Yeah.
called you to be. Um, Before we leave, I need to ask you this because okay, so with children, as moms, I feel like the high school years as a mom, that there's so much reward placed on lots of activity, lots
Mm,
of popularity, lots of football games, cheerleader, activities, go, go, go. And oftentimes the introverted student, child, young adult feels even less than within their own home because of the emphasis that the parent puts on them. So I've got 3 boys, one's 22, one's 20, and one's 13. One of them is an extrovert, but the rest of us are introverts. But from the time that they were really little, I was so aware of not shaming
mm,
the introvert child to need that time, who's not wanting to go out and play with friends in the neighborhood 5 days a week. And
mhm.
from the work that you've done with mothers and women, what would be a good train of thought or a good truth point that we can take as moms, particularly in ministry when there seems to be a lot of pressure that we put on our kids or other people put on our kids? What's kind of an anchor point that we can hold on to of truth that will help us raise our kids in understanding that it's okay that you're wired differently?
Yeah. One big shift in thinking for me was I realized that there is no verse anywhere in scripture about loving people that relates to quantity. It's all about quality.
What?
And Jesus even said,
Wow.
one another, love one another. And so that was such a big aha for me because I'd sort of use this measuring stick of like the more people in my life, the more social engagement I have, the better Christian I am.
Yes.
You
I
know,
felt
and when I
that.
looked, I was like, that's not biblical. It just isn't. Like, we're called to love one another. And so for some of that, that means we're gonna do that in a group setting, and that is
Mm,
great. For some of us, we're gonna do it one-on-one and in quieter ways, and that is just as needed. So for all of us, and as parents especially, I've say look for a pattern of engagement and then
mm,
solitude and restoration, engagement, solitude, and restoration. And we all need that, even extroverts. If an extrovert is all engagement, no solitude and restoration, that's a red flag
mm,
too. But if your introvert kids are engaging in a way that works for them, may look
mm,
different, but they are engaging, they're having meaningful connections somehow in their life. And then they are taking time to have solitude and restoration. That's healthy. You
mm,
know, if any kid is in their room 24/7 and completely
mhm,
withdrawn and unwilling to ever connect at all with anyone, then of course that is when we want to say this may be more than introversion. This might be depression. There might be
mhm,
something else going on. But
mm,
if there's a healthy pattern of those two things together, then I
mm,
think we can look for that. But yeah, just saying, it's not about quantity, it's about
mhm.
quality.
That's
And
really good.
that is what was modeled for us
Mm,
by Jesus. He practiced both. He went into lonely places and prayed, and he engaged with crowds. And so just asking what ratio of those two things makes the
mhm,
most sense for how God has wired me, where he's placed me in this season,
mm,
and what does that look like for the family members. One other
mm,
little related thing is
mhm,
introverts and extroverts experience happiness differently. And so, because of the neurotransmitters for extroverts, happiness looks and is experienced as enthusiasm and excitement.
mhm.
For introverts, because of the way we're wired, it's experienced and expressed as contentment and calm. So often, an extrovert parent will see their introvert kid just kind of sitting there and they think, oh no, something's wrong. But
Yes.
actually, that is what introvert happiness often looks like. We're calm, we're content, we're with our people, we're safe, we belong. So we're just chilling out. And so that can even be helpful. Or introvert extrovert marriages, that can be a huge aha because we worry about our people, and
We do.
bless our extroverts who just want us to be happy. So
I
it can be
know.
helpful to know, like, okay, this we have two different versions of what happiness looks like. Even at the, around saying, yeah, what makes you happy? What does happiness feel like to you? Is a great
Mm,
question to ask the people in your family
mm.
because you will probably get different answers depending on the person you're asking is an extrovert or introvert.
That is so unlocking. I think that that is so fascinating. There's so much to know and to learn in this, and I'm just so grateful for not only the physical complexities that God created us as, I mean, different eyes, hair, nose, but all the internal differences that they are, but yet they're still grouped in groups. And so we can have the introverts that we can relate to and understand and need the extroverts to kind of build in that full circle. And God is just so creative and so wise in all the ways that he does things. In closing, is there a scripture that you're clinging to right now or that you have used as an anchor in your ministry life?
Yeah, I think one that is guiding me in this season is actually when Jesus was baptized. And, there was a voice from heaven saying, "This is my beloved Son in whom I'm well pleased." And we know when we give our lives to Christ, we are one with him. And so today, our Father God says, "You are my beloved." I believe that is the truest thing about any of us, introvert or extrovert, that we are beloved. And that's not something we have to earn or prove or strive for. It is just something to hear and receive. And so I think we can pray, like, God, every day, help me hear that from you, that I am your beloved. as I am, as you made me to be. And then the more we live into that, the more we can help other people understand their unique and God-given belovedness too.
That's so good because we can't give what we don't have. And I think in ministry, so much we're forcing what we know to be true, but we haven't really believed it for ourselves. And to tell others they're loved and accepted, but yet still dealing with so many wounds and hurts and shame in our own heart because we have not stepped into that of knowing that we are His beloved. And so I just encourage you, those who are listening, what does that even mean to you? What does that look like to you, being God's beloved? Look through scripture and see how He loves, cares, protects, provides for, and be able to move out into the things that He has called you to move out into, rooted in being His beloved. So that's a beautiful way to end, Holley. I just am so grateful that we've had this conversation about half of the people group in the world, and really with the bottom line that God is a beautiful designer and that we need each other,
Yes.
introverts and extroverts. So thank you so much for being here with me today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, that wraps it up for today. I am so glad that you were here with me for this conversation in our 10-part series on finding your place. If it was helpful to you, or maybe you thought of a friend who would be encouraged by it while you're listening, please share it with them. You can also click follow on your favorite podcast platform so that each episode will download automatically just for you every time one is released. Well, that's it. I look forward to seeing you back here next week on the Ministry Wives Podcast, a production of the North American Mission Board.
Learn how to leverage your job, skill, and passion where you live, work, and play for the glory of God. Leverage Your Life, 5 Kingdom Priorities is a 6-week small group Bible study that includes teaching videos from Send Network President Vance Pittman, a study book with group experiences, daily devotions, and leader helps, sermon prompts for a church-wide emphasis, and promotional resources. Best of all Leverage Your Life resources may be downloaded for free. Visit leverageyourlifestudy.com.